Frozen 4 is happening, so let's talk about it. So this morning, Bob Iger appeared on Good Morning America to talk about Hong Kong Disneyland's newest land, the world of Frozen, and he had something very interesting to say about the future of the Frozen film franchise.
Frozen 3 is in the works, and there might be a Frozen 4 in the works too. And Jen Lee, who created Frozen, the original Frozen and Frozen 2, is hard at work with her team at Disney Animation on not one, but actually 2 stories.
So Jennifer Lee, the chief creative officer at Walt Disney Animation Studios, is leading teams to develop Frozen 3 and Frozen 4. Personally, I think this is really exciting news. I know some people feel this fatigue around franchises, that every kind of story that becomes popular then has to be squeezed and pushed on for too long, and stories just feel like they're being pumped out and no longer cared for. But I think the reveal that Frozen 3 and Frozen 4 are being developed at the same time is actually a great sign for the future of the franchise. You see, there's a lot of approaches to take to build a giant cinematic universe. There's great examples of planning from the very beginning, like Peter Jackson's The Lord of the Rings. They planned out 3 movies and filmed them back to back. Well, that allows for perfect continuity between all of the elements of the story. That is also a very expensive and risky thing to take on for a studio, so it's not done very often. Other sagas like Star Wars' first 6 films were led by one clear visionary and was able to be connected even though each of the stories were being built slowly over time. There's other times where new creative teams are brought on to give their own vision for the characters and the story and to expand in different ways. Like Monsters, Inc. then was given a prequel by a completely different director. But what Frozen is doing now is the most reminiscent of what the Spider-Verse saga is doing. You see, Into the Spider-Verse released, was able to become a very successful and highly acclaimed film, and then a large majority of the creative team came back together to plan out what the remainder of the trilogy would look like so that the remainder of the story could become one overarching narrative. The expansion of the world was able to be thought through so that now as we move forward in that franchise, we're confident that it's going to be resolved in a satisfying way because it's been planned for years. And this is also exactly what Dean DeBlois was allowed to do with the How to Train Your Dragon trilogy. And I think that's what's going to happen with Frozen 3 and Frozen 4. If we were always destined to get a Frozen 4, I'm glad that it's being developed while Frozen 3 is being created, because that means that Frozen 4 will be able to pay off things that are set up in Frozen 3, and that we can reflect on what happened in the original movie and in Frozen 2 and see how all of that will be able to conclude in Frozen 4. My guess is that Frozen 4 will be the last movie in the saga. And if that's the case, I'm glad that they're able to reflect on the entire story before it becomes the final film. We also really don't know how they came to the decision to create Frozen 4. It's very possible that in the development of Frozen 3, the creators were able to determine that the story would be better suited if it was divided into 2 more films. And if that's the case, I think that's also really exciting. The story is expanding. The world will most likely be expanding. We're going to see Frozen continue to develop into a larger saga. Another criticism I'm expecting to hear a lot is the fact that we don't even need a Frozen 3 because Frozen 2 is able to wrap up the story so well. And to that I'd say, I think the original movie wrapped up the story really well. Frozen's whole story was about 2 sisters who were pulled apart along with their kingdom because of fear, but through their true love, they were able to come together. That whole story was able to be resolved within the original movie, but Frozen 2 was able to expand who those characters were and what made up their world in a completely interesting and new way. A way that I was definitely not expecting. When I originally watched Frozen 2, I was really frustrated with the way that the story went. But honestly, as I've continued to sit with it, as I've continued to enjoy the music and hear different perspectives on it, I've gotten a completely new lens into the way the characters behaved. One of my friends often said that I just didn't have enough trauma in my life to truly be able to empathize with Elsa. And I think to some extent, I also just heavily related with Anna to a point that it was difficult for me to understand Elsa's perspective throughout Frozen 2. But now I understand both of them a lot more, and I enjoy the way that the story was able to develop. I just really latched onto the idea that Elsa and Anna were at a good place and would always be at a good place forevermore. I was committed to the idea that Elsa was going to be queen, and when that changed, I was heartbroken. But now as I reflect on the story of Frozen 2, I'm excited by what could come next. The second film did answer a lot of interesting things that were brought up in the original film. They expanded upon the mysteries that the original film had established. What happened to Elsa and Anna's parents? Where did they go? How did Elsa get her powers? What is Elsa's purpose? And now what I think is going to be very interesting is to see how Frozen 3 and Frozen 4 are able to expand on what has been established in Frozen 2. To me, I kind of always wanted there to be more films because I felt like the end of Frozen 2 actually left me with a lot more feelings of unease and questions than the original film ever did. Like now wondering how the Northuldra and Arendelle will work together into the future. Will there be ramifications for Arendelle because of Elsa's existence around the world? Will the Duke of Wesselton and the princes of the Southern Isles ever return to try to vanquish this evil sorceress that they encountered? Through Elsa and Anna's grandfather, we now know that there is a history of magic being a source of fear for mankind. So it seems like now that Elsa has been fully exposed to the world, Arendelle and the Northuldra will have to deal with a real human threat that builds up. I mean, I also think there'll be really interesting developments for Anna and Elsa themselves. How will Anna handle the role as queen? How will Elsa handle the role as protector of the Enchanted Forest? And on a more fun note, what happened to Kristoff? I mean, we only got to see Kristoff for a little bit. He was a main character in the first movie and he disappeared in the second. So now that we have 2 more films, I think it's going to feel a lot easier to deal with the lower amount of Kristoff and Sven within the second film because hopefully their stories will be able to be expanded again. I mean, at some point we're going to see Anna and Kristoff get married because now they're engaged. Who knows where that relationship will continue to go forward into the future. By asking all these questions, my main thought is just to show that there's a lot of interesting directions that Frozen 3 and Frozen 4 can take. I know Frozen 2 wasn't perfect. I mean, I think it's still crazy that the creators didn't know who the voice was coming from Atta Holland until a few weeks before the movie released. When I heard that in the documentary Into the Unknown, my mind was blown and I was so frustrated. But I think overall, the story and the characters are in good hands. Honestly, the main reason that I want a Frozen 3 and 4 though is the fact that I want Elsa and Anna to be able to finally work together as sisters. So far, the first 2 movies had them apart, dealing with and mending their relationship and accepting that they needed to go and live their own lives. But now I think there's the possibility of a threat being established that could be so big that the 2 sisters finally get to work together. When the stakes get risen, when the danger is there, when true darkness comes to their kingdom, what will Elsa and Anna do? I want to see Elsa and Anna coming together as sisters to show that they can overcome anything. I'm Isaac Carlson. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope you have a very magical rest of your day.